Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Minor spoiler, who's ready for the world damage record in the USS Arizona? Okay, actually, probably a fairly major spoiler. However, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be any surprises in this battle. One thing that isn't going to be a surprise is that it's the USS Arizona, so don't expect any fast-paced gameplay. What may be slightly surprising is that you're about to see the world damage record in the USS Arizona, which is a Tier 6 battleship, in a Tier 8 battle. Now admittedly, there aren't that many Tier 8s in this battle, only 3 per team, and Lexmac here is one of 7 Tier 6s per team in this battle. What's slightly more unusual is that there are 2 Tier 5s in this battle. Although they are Tier 5s, the Koenig on Lexmac's team and the Congo on the enemy team, who made the mistake of divisioning up with a pair of Tier 6s. And they got into the worst possible matchmaking that a Tier 6 could have, which is going to be frankly terrifying for a Tier 5 battleship like the Koenig or the Congo. Neither of them, however, do themselves any favours whatsoever, as you'll see later on, when Lexmac is in a position to observe the Koenig and when he's busy fighting the Congo. To begin with, opening salvo against HMS Devonshire, British heavy cruiser over there. The range is extreme, but the aim is good. And oh boy, it's a good hit. It is in fact something of a paddling. And oh, how Lexmac wishes it had been an even better hit. That's what we call foreshadowing, by the way. And that was also a minor spoiler, but you'll understand. Yeah, Lexmac is really going to be wishing that that opening salvo hadn't just paddled the Devonshire, but had in fact taken it out, as we shall see towards the end of this match. Observe the Kagero up ahead. You can just see him launching torpedoes. You can't see him now, but he was just off the extreme right edge of the screen. Tier 8 destroyer, and has the best concealment in this battle. Nothing else even comes close. Not the T-61, certainly, who's just been sunk. So the team have lost the destroyer. Enemy destroyer spotted. And it's good to see that even though he's in a battleship, when Lexmac sees a destroyer, he shoots at the destroyer. Observe the Kagero torpedoes. The Kagero torpedoes that have completely failed to hit anything. That's going to be a recurring theme throughout this battle, by the way. The Kagero player, I mean, that initial torpedo launch wasn't bad. They were fired blind into the smoke screen, and he was kind of unlucky that he didn't hit anything. But the Kagero failing to hit things with his torpedoes is going to be a recurring theme throughout this battle. Anshan still spotted, and it is taking hits. But under the circumstances, I kind of agree that a broadsiding Ismail is probably a far juicier target. Particularly since the Anshan is coming under sustained fire from at least 3 other targets and is probably not going to survive much longer. And that was a beautiful hit on the Ismail. And yep, the Anshan has gone down. Note, the Kagero using his guns against the Anshan. Good to see. Too many Japanese destroyer captains that aren't, Akazukis, Kitakazis and Harugamos forget that their guns do actually work. Unfortunately, the enemy team have just claimed their second kill. Even more unfortunately, it was the Baltimore, one of the team's 3 Tier 8s and the team's only radar cruiser. Lexmac responds by unloading a salvo against the Chapayev, the enemy team's Tier 8 cruiser and only radar, and he's rewarded with a double Citadel. An extremely valuable kill, I'm sure you'll agree. Also a kill that his team's surviving destroyers are going to be very, very happy with. Because it means that those 2 surviving destroyers, and you can see them both up ahead, are now free to finish off that Ismail with very little risk of being detected. That is, of course, unless Lexmac can beat them to it. Shots out. Again, the range is extreme, but the Ismail is in most other respects a perfect target. And unfortunately, well, RNGesus giveth, and RNGesus taketh away. The Arizona is remarkably accurate, certainly by Tier 6 battleship standards, although possibly not quite as accurate as the Warspite, but she rarely misses what she aims at. This unfortunately was just one of those occasions when she did. And of course it didn't exactly help that while the Ismail was broadsiding him, he was broadsiding the Ismail and ran into an island, making himself a broadsiding stationary target. And seriously, look at the island. He had to work pretty hard to run into that. There wasn't an awful lot of island there for him to hit, but somehow he managed to find a way. Equally unfortunately, the team have just suffered a further casualty. They've lost their Graf B. They're also, unless I'm very much mistaken, about to lose that North Carolina, which means the team are about to be down a further Tier 8. Yep, there it goes. Further to the north, the Kagero was once again missing the Ismail with every torpedo it's launched. Although he's in fairly good company because the Icarus up to the north has managed to miss with every torpedo he's launched as well. The Kagero, at least, was smart enough to not get close enough to get spotted while doing it, something that cannot be said of the Icarus, who's gotten to within suicide range of the Ismail, which of course means he's also spotted by the Devonshire, and that, before too long, is going to have fairly predictably disastrous results for the Icarus, as Lexmac continues to fire at the enemy team's other Tier 8, the Richie Lulu over there. And he's not doing too badly. He's up to 73,000 damage. I don't understand why the Icarus is still alive up there in the top right corner of the map, but don't worry, he's not going to be for very long. Not with 2 battleships and a heavy cruiser shooting at him. The Kagero, undetected, continues to launch torpedoes. Some of these might actually hit something. I'm not entirely sure one way or the other, but the Icarus has finally succumbed to the consequences of what happens when you're trailing a battleship at a range of 2 kilometers within shooting range of not just that battleship's secondaries, but also the main guns of a heavy cruiser and another battleship. The team are now down to less than 200 points. Or they were. And then the friendly Bayern got a kill and actually bought them a little bit more time, but for a point there they were 300 points behind, with the enemy team in possession of 3 of the 4 capture circles. Once again, enemy destroyer spotted, this time the Erland. Once again, Lexmac shoots at the enemy destroyer, or would have if it had stayed visible for just a second longer. Next target. The Scharnhorst is looking pretty good. Tier 7 premium German battleship. And there's the friendly Tier 5 in this battle. The Koenig, Tier 5 German battleship, who managed to get into a Tier 8 battle by divisioning up with a Tier 6. And he's given a flat broadside to the Scharnhorst. Now the Scharnhorst's 280mm guns are generally not that good when firing armor piercing at dealing with other battleships, unless that other battleship is 2 tiers lower and giving you a flat broadside to shoot at, which the Koenig is. So naturally, instead of firing armor piercing, the Scharnhorst is firing high explosive. Because of course he is. But the trade-off for the Scharnhorst's low caliber guns is an exceptionally fast reload, so he can, but isn't, reloading the AP. But that's not the best part. Did you see the torpedoes that just popped up there right at the limit of the Koenig's detection range? They ran out of steam and sank before they got to within 1.5 kilometers of the Koenig, but what that means is that the Scharnhorst just launched his 6-kilometer range torpedoes at a battleship 8 kilometers away, and while doing it, he's still giving flat broadside to Lexmac. And once again, it's the Kagero using his guns who actually gets the kill. And the friendly Huang He, who is charging down the other enemy destroyer, the Hatsuharu, has managed to also get a kill of his own. So they're still behind, but it's not looking quite as desperate as it was just a couple of seconds ago. And of course, thanks to the bloody-minded obliviousness of the Scharnhorst player, Lexmac has managed to add another 30,000 damage to his total, and now he's got a second chance to take care of that Devonshire. But that's when they spot the enemy carrier. It's not often you do spot an enemy carrier, and it's not often you spot an enemy carrier that's sailing straight towards you. So his decision to try to keep the Huang He alive and shoot at the carrier that's bearing down on its smokescreen is completely understandable. At the same time, I strongly suspect Lexmac is going to regret his decision to not shoot at that Devonshire again, for reasons that are going to become obvious by the end of this video. Yeah. Anyway, the Vesser's disappeared. He's got a Pensacola that he can see. Although he can angle against the Pensacola, it should be fine as long as the Pensacola doesn't start harassing him with 8-inch high explosive. A Congo has just turned up, but then the Vesser reappears, and he's perilously close to proximity detection range on the Huang He. And the Vesser's secondaries could probably make a mess of the Huang He, let alone any fire coming in from the Pensacola, who is firing high explosive, crossfire coming from the enemy New Mexico, which is not good, and fire coming in from the Congo. If that Huang He does get spotted, he's gotten torpedoes away, which have completely missed. He has now been spotted. The Vesser is close enough to proximity detect him. The Vesser's secondaries are opening up. At this point, even if they do sink that carrier, and Lexmac is giving it the old college try, I don't think they can keep the Pan-Asian cruiser alive. The Huang He's managed to get a second set of torpedoes away. Hopefully he'll have better luck with them this time. The Pensacola continues to pump 8-inch high explosive into Lexmac's superstructure. And the Huang He has managed to take the carrier down, but fairly predictably he didn't survive the encounter and got finished off by crossfire from the New Mexico. Frankly, given how low the Huang He's health was and for how long he was spotted, I'm just amazed it took them as long as it did. What I'm not amazed at is that the Pensacola gives a flat broadside to an Arizona at a range of 2 kilometers. I mean, the Pensacola's a fairly fragile cruiser with a fairly large citadel. You'd think he'd know better. The Congo... oh dear. You see, Lexmac has 2 problems here. The first is the Congo. The second, which is a much smaller problem, are the remaining airdrop torpedoes from the surviving aircraft from the enemy carrier. As you just saw, thanks to the torpedo damage reduction and the fact that they're airdrop torpedoes, they're only doing 2,000 damage per hit. So he wisely chooses to just ignore the remaining aircraft and angle against the Congo instead. Something, as you can quite plainly see, that the Congo doesn't appear to be too concerned about himself, as he continues to give broadside to the Arizona's guns, and the Arizona has a lot of guns and suffers the consequences. You'd think that after getting paddled like that, the Congo might change his course. And he does in fact change his course, because at the moment he's actually slightly angled, and we can't possibly have that. So he changes course to give a perfect flat broadside instead of just a mostly perfect flat broadside. And Lexmac, I'm sure, is very grateful for that. He's now up to 183,000 damage, and he's evened, if not the scores, then at least the kills. Although, looking at the Furious over there, he appears to be determined to do everything he possibly can to do something about that. Top tip: if you're in an aircraft carrier, it's generally a good idea, if enemy ships are closing in, to start moving before they get to within 5 kilometers of you. Right. Well, the Kagero has not been idle. He's managed to flip one of the caps, although with the enemy team 300 points ahead, and only 6 minutes of this game left, I'm fairly sure that the result of this match is not going to be decided on points. At least, not in favour of Lexmac's team. Lexmac in chat there letting the Kagero know a couple of extremely useful things. First, that the Erland, the surviving enemy destroyer, is on extremely low health. Second, that the Erland is currently spotting him to give the Kagero some idea of where he might be. And also, the only thing keeping the Devonshire and the New Mexico spotted are the Furious's surviving aircraft, and they're not going to be surviving for very much longer, which means those 2 ships are going to go undetected. Certainly the Devonshire is, but the New Mexico is still spotted by virtue of the fact that it's still firing, but given how long it takes the New Mexico to reload its guns, the New Mexico has also gone undetected, and to his very great credit, the Kagero agrees. Oop, Erland torpedoes. And rather than trying to flip Alpha, the Kagero is heading this way to get some much needed eyes on targets. He's managed to spot the Devonshire. Well done. The New Mexico continuing to shoot, and for now at least, continuing to miss. Keeping eyes on the New Mexico is unlikely to be a problem. The Devonshire also firing with high explosive and actually doing some damage. On the plus side, with the Kagero over here, they're almost definitely going to spot the Erland before the Erland spots the Kagero. There is no way an Erland, under most circumstances, is ever going to outspot a Kagero. And then two things happen. The Erland finally gets a couple of torpedoes on target, and Lexmac gets a Citadel, another Citadel, on the Devonshire. Agonisingly, not quite enough to finish him. The Devonshire immediately starts healing up, but for a second there he was at less than 1,000 health. Lexmac starts swinging the ship around, desperately trying to get all the turrets pointing at the Devonshire and finish him off before he escapes and goes undetected. Shots out. Erland spotted. The Kagero does not waste any time. With an Erland on low health like that, he swings his gun turrets around and starts shooting. And he takes out the Erland. Unfortunately, it was a good shot at the Devonshire, and if it had arrived a couple of seconds earlier, it probably would have killed him because he did over 4,000 damage. But in that space of time, the Devonshire had managed to get his damage repair up, managed to survive by the skin of his teeth, and has once again gone undetected. The Kagero's torpedoes, once again, completely failed to hit anything. But on the bright side, it is now 2-on-2. Lexmac continues to pump more damage into the New Mexico, avoids any remaining torpedoes that the Erland had fired, and successfully weathers the parting salvo from the New Mexico over there with very little damage sustained. And now the New Mexico is in serious trouble because, well, it's a Kagero. There is absolutely no way a Kagero is ever going to get spotted by a New Mexico. It's just a question of how long it's going to take the Kagero to reload his torpedoes. There's 3 minutes of the game left. He should have enough time. And at that point, the New Mexico is toast. And that's if Lexmac doesn't finish him off first with some extremely accurate gunnery. The Arizona does have very accurate guns. At tier 6, I think it's second only to the Warspite. Hang on a second. The New Mexico just fired at the Kagero. The New Mexico is on fire. Has the Kagero been given his position away by shooting at the New Mexico? I think he has. Well, he's reloaded his torpedoes. There's some more very, very good shots there from Lexmac. The torpedoes are on the way. And with the amount of health that the New Mexico's on, one torpedo hit is all it's going to take. However, that's one more torpedo hit than the Kagero is going to get. He's managed to miss the New Mexico again. Lexmac, probably getting a bit desperate at this point, gets some more shots out. The Kagero continues to shoot at the New Mexico, with no immediate return fire, which suggests that he was shooting from behind line of sight. And Lexmac does hit the New Mexico. Doesn't kill him, so what's the Kagero to do now? Well, clearly, the situation demands that he steams around the corner of the island, into line of sight, into shooting range, and gets killed by the New Mexico. Something that almost certainly led to Lexmac to start banging his head into his keyboard in frustration. However, before we all start pointing the finger at the Kagero, it's possible, maybe even likely, that the Kagero had recognised that it didn't really matter what happened with the New Mexico. He knew that his torpedoes weren't going to reload in time for him to finish him off with the torpedo, assuming he did actually manage to land one of them on target for the first time in this game, and just decided, screw it, he's on low health. I'm not exactly going to lose anything by shooting at him. We might sink him, I might set a fire, he might get me in return. None of that mattered, of course, because the New Mexico was a sideshow. The main event was the Devonshire. The Devonshire that Lexmac gave an almighty paddling to on 2 separate occasions, but just wasn't able to seal the deal. The Devonshire that very wisely didn't try to win any harder than they were already going to, went undetected, stayed undetected, flipped a cap, and won the game on points. And so, despite doing 255,483 damage in a Tier 6 battleship, the world damage record for this particular Tier 6 battleship, it just wasn't enough. And he might have gotten away with it too, if it hadn't been for that pesky Devonshire. That's it for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.